The third tactic is this. I would love for you to write it down. Manage your priorities. Manage your priorities. Every day you should be thinking about how to manage your priorities, how to orchestrate the details of your life around the things that matter most. This is where most of us get tripped up. For the last several years, I've had this statement that's kind of been a guiding phrase for my life, and it might look different than for you, but I'm gonna share with you what mine is, and then you can contextualize it for yourself. But here's the phrase that helps me with my priorities, okay? I think about it this way: Christian, husband, father, pastor, in that order always. Christian, husband, father, pastor, in that order always. This is a statement for me about priority. My relationship with Christ, as it should be for each and every one of us, by the way, is of first importance. If I fail to manage that priority, if I fail to spend the time with Jesus that is required for everything else in my life, then I will surely miss it. As soon as Jesus falls out of his proper place in all of our lives, we will have missed it. And so the most important thing for me is the relationship that I have with Christ, as it should be for you. But then as I think about the rest of my priorities, I think about being a husband. Outside of being a Christian, that is the number one thing that God has called me to be. And in fact, if I begin to prioritize my children over my spouse, I've missed it. If I begin to prioritize the people in our church, listen to me, I love you. I love you. If I prioritize you over my own kids, I've missed it. And by the way, I'm not helpful to you. Christian, husband, father, pastor, in that order always. So I understand that our occupations or our roles in life may be different, but what does that look like for you? Because here's my fear. I'm gonna be really honest with you this morning. I'm not terribly afraid in my life of doing the wrong things. I am afraid of doing the right things in the wrong order. I am terribly afraid of doing the right things in the wrong order. And so when I think about my life, I need to steward my life around these priorities. Christ in his proper place, my family first, my occupation after, right? I have to think about things that way. Or you can think about people, and maybe we've been these people that get priorities like this out of order. We're all probably guilty of putting our occupation as a first priority, or a business as a first priority, or something. But in reality, it doesn't yield the results that we want. We have to learn to manage our priorities. Because the goal here is kind of simple. The goal is to live by design and not by default. Most people live by default, but we don't have to settle for that. We can actually live by design instead of default. Because here's the truth. If you don't learn to manage your priorities, someone else will manage them for you. If you don't know what is the most important thing in your life, someone else will tell you. So we have to learn to manage our priorities so that people don't do it for us, right? This is actually so very important, because this is not about getting things done. This is about getting things right. And so I want to encourage you, even this week, consider what things are actually most important in your life. And then how you spend your time, does it reflect the things that are actually most important to you? And if not, like if you do that exercise and you audit your time based on your priorities, maybe it's time for a change. Because we don't have to settle for living by default. We can actually live by design. And what I mean to say is that there is a way that God has designed our time to be used. He actually gives us the tools and the direction that we need to spend time in accordance with his will. But often the way we think about time is very different than the way that the Lord thinks about time, right? So most of us think about our day beginning like when your alarm clock went off this morning. This is, how many of you are like alarm clock people? You absolutely will not wake up without an alarm clock at a very specific time. Just raise your hand proudly, okay? How many of you would be honest enough in church to say you're a snooze button person, okay? Oh gosh, I can't handle snooze button people, right? I got one in my home, right? But most of us think about our day starting when the alarm clock goes off, or after you've hit the snooze button 3 or 4 times, right? But in reality, the way that the Lord created our day, it doesn't begin when the sun comes up. It begins when the sun goes down. Your day doesn't start in the morning. Your day starts the night before when you make decisions about how long you're gonna sleep for, about what you're gonna do right before bed. So what if instead of scrolling through Netflix or that you were actually spending time in God's word preparing, because that's the start of your day, right? It's the same way we think about like Sunday. Sunday's not the end of the week. Sunday's the beginning of the week. That's why this time is so important. Why? Give the Lord our first and best, right? We come here and we gather around God's word because it's the start of our week and it sets us on the right path. And so I just want you to think about, these are decisions that we can make so that we can live by design and not by default. If you manage your priorities, then you will make sure that you're spending your time on things that matter most. Maybe you've seen this illustration before, right? These are 3 different jars with different amounts of marbles in them, and this jar represents all of us. This is 1 marble for the 4,160 weeks of the average human lifespan. So every week is one of these marbles, right? So just think about your last week. What did you do with the time that you were given? Because in reality, you'll never get it back. You'll never experience that time again. And if we're not careful, like a month goes by. And if we're not careful, our lives would go by. It looks like a lot of time, but it's not. This jar has 950 marbles that represent 1 week of a child's life between the time they're born and the time they turn 18 and they graduate high school and go on to college and they move out of their house. We use this illustration a lot talking to parents, right? Because you got 950 weeks with your kid in your home. What are you gonna do with that time? It's meant to teach us about the brevity and how precious time really is. Brevity of life and how precious time really is. This depressing jar is the number of marbles that I have and my wife Christine that we have with our oldest before he leaves our house. So I actually have 416 weeks left before he leaves the house. If this doesn't teach us to manage our priorities, I'm not really sure what will. This looks like a whole lot of time, but it's not. And so we have to learn to manage the things that are most important to us, because if we can manage our priorities, then we can invest our time wisely.